We are live. Hello and welcome.
Alive.
Welcome to the Swing Shift with your hosts Pete and Lack. How is everyone doing this evening?
Hi all.
Hello,
Hi ho.
Peter. How are you, young man?
You're gonna forgive me. I feel like death warmed up.
Oh, really? Sorry to hear
Uh,
that.
feel like complete crap, but I'll get through it. I'll get through it.
Oh. Well, sorry to
Yeah,
hear that. You're just under the weather, or you were hit by a
yeah,
bus, or what?
yeah. Had to be in summertime, didn't it? So over here.
Oh, right on,
Yeah,
right on.
yeah.
Well,
But,
we won't keep you too long, I guess. But
play
anyway.
those small little violins for me, everybody.
Oh yes.
So
Well,
yeah.
we all deeply care about you, Peter. We hope you.
Where's your cowboy hat?
Oh, I thought it would be interesting to not wear one for the Western episode.
Well, you could. I mean,
I
you
could
could.
have, and then
So
you say, "I how do you not own? How do you not own a cowboy hat?"
I own. Hang on, wait a minute.
Oh, wait, he said, "Wait a minute, wait a minute."
I own this.
Oh, look, you're the man from Snowy River.
Mm,
I
I own
like
that.
it.
I own that.
You're
But,
Indiana.
mm,
I like that.
it's not exactly Indiana, but because it's Fury, it's a felt kind of hat. It's not exactly the same as Indiana's.
Uh
So
huh.
yeah,
It's very dashing on you, young man. Very dashing.
yes,
Hello to
yes.
everyone in the chat. I don't know who's
Yeah.
here.
Um,
Uh, we may not be talking to y'all in the chat too much just because I don't know how to
um,
use this thing. I don't know how to use this thing.
it's all
Uh,
right. They can chat amongst themselves if they want today. If they
yeah,
want.
absolutely. So
Um,
today's episode is we've decided is westerns, correct? Which is a
yep.
which is a lovely
That's
bit of.
Well,
Well, tell.
you can probably, well, you're a big Western fan, but you're a big Western fan of John Wayne and Billy Jack, aren't you? So,
Well, many, not just many people. There's many subgenres of western. You know.
well, there's old
Um,
day Western, there's black and white, there's, uh, I think there's films on the story of Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
oh yeah.
Really old reels
Oh
from
yeah.
God knows when, probably 1920s or something.
The first American film ever made was a western. It's called The Train Robbery. Some people say it's the first commercial silent film ever made. What was that? 1918. The Great Train Robbery. Mr. B, hello.
Hey, Mr.
Uh,
B.
I was gonna say what's interesting. I was thinking earlier. At least in your neighboring uh, country of Australia, there is a very large crossover between the story of the American West and Australia. Um, like you
Basically,
said, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, they wanted to go from Bolivia to
yeah.
Australia. That was their next place they wanted to go. That was the new frontier to a lot of American people at that time.
Not a lot went over there though. There was a strong influx of Europeans, Irish, Scots, Dutch, Chinese, but
Hmm.
they were all following the gold rush even here. You know,
Right. That's what I was. Yes, and same thing with Americans. There was a
yeah.
huge influx of
Um,
Americans also
they followed
following
the gold rush here.
the yeah the
Right?
biggest gold rush prior
Yeah.
to Australia's gold rush was the American gold rush,
Yeah.
right? So, and
Um,
actually, a lot of those gold miners found out when they got to Australia that Australia's gold veins were actually fairly small, right? And it was actually the silver and the
mm,
copper that made Australia
yeah, but
worth its weight.
Australia's full of convicts. That's why they
Of
all
course,
shipped them.
of course.
That's the
As
old. That's the pioneer Western thing that
yeah.
they made their fortune on robbing, stealing, and killing and debauchery of every sense.
Who
Um,
Australians?
well, Europeans mostly. There is
Oh,
something.
I would say everyone actually. I don't think that's a European thing, is it?
No, not really.
That's not a European thing. That's a human thing.
Shocking stories of
I mean,
English
yeah,
and Scotsmen killing
of course.
Aboriginals.
You know, yeah, of course. Oh, of
Uh,
course.
mm,
Startling stories of the Aborigines killing other Aborigines. Also, how many Europeans were skinning people alive, butchering them, and eating them? That's a very not European thing,
yes,
right?
well, you've got
Europeans quit that pre-Romans, right? I'm just saying Europeans quit that. Non-Europeans still do that today in lots of countries. Do they not? So
but I mean,
I'm just so I don't know. I don't think it's a European. I don't think that's a European thing. I don't think it's a European thing. I think
but
that's a
what's
human thing.
but you could swing that back to the westerns. I mean, you can see a lot of the history being told in the story, don't you?
Oh
Especially
yeah.
especially the Searchers, which is probably one of my favorite John Wayne films, is the Searchers. You know,
Oh, definitely. That was A&E's top 100 films of the 21st century. Also.
so you could say that to uh, the train robberies were real. So that's
Hmm.
where Butch Cassidy. I mean, all these movies were basically made to be real, but put on a silver screen.
Right, right. Well, they were made. Some of them were not just made to be real, but made from real events,
Adapted,
historical. Yeah.
adapted, but not solely adapted to the, you know, how they
Right.
change it in
Right. Well,
film.
then that's the same with Robin Hood or
Mm.
Sinbad the Sailor or right. I mean the American Western genre is. I think there's a big misunderstanding because there has to be labels and everything, right? Like a Western is really a time period. People mistake Westerns as a type of movie that has
Mm.
a certain qualification, and American Western is a time period. It's a time period. There are so many different stories about that are inside of those. That's inside of that genre that it's very lost.
But
I think that's.
you made an
Hmm?
interesting point. You made an interesting point on one of your videos that the time period of the westerns finished at World War Two.
In a sense, yes. I would think maybe as a country as a whole, that was definitely the beginning of the end.
I thought
Because you,
that I
you
I
know,
my added discussion would be uh, it would have finished basically in World War One because they were still. I mean, you see. I mean, if you haven't seen 1923, I don't know how factual it is, but they were still in their kind of ranches and
oh yeah.
contrast of the new automobile being brought in 1923. I thought that would be almost the end of it.
Well, I guess if you want to define as a Western having to be that they ride horses,
I
but
mean,
I feel, but
in the time period, I'm looking at the time period here. I'm looking at the time period. You said 19, you said World War Two it ended.
oh yeah, I would definitely put it, and in some parts of this continent, maybe even, you
Right.
could maybe even go out to the 1960s. Look at a movie like Deliverance, and that
Oh
people who
yeah.
live in Appalachia in that movie. That's the West. That I mean, of course, now that is technically in the east of America and all that fucking shit. But
I
those
get.
people are milking cows and getting chicken eggs, and that's 1978. And
Right.
those people are living in the fucking American West,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
they have horses and wagons, and they burn wood in their stove to stay warm, and
It's
fuck,
a lifestyle.
what
It's a
yeah, it's
lifestyle.
a lifestyle and maybe even I wouldn't say it's a mindset because there's too many. The game of Red Dead Redemption can teach you that you can be bad, you can be good. That's a human thing. That's not a European thing. That's not a. That's not any of that shit,
Yeah.
right? Or it's like the American West wasn't necessarily built on debauchery, but there was definitely room for it to be because it was a lawless frontier
I
and
mean,
in right, but it's not
yeah.
built on that. The
No,
actual West and maybe even the idea of this country that I live in was actually built on the people who were against the debauchery for moral reasons and didn't need the police or a government to make people.
Mm.
It was the John Waynes. It was the people. It was the good people like you and I who say, "Hey, that's wrong. Don't do that." So maybe the American West was founded
Oh,
on the exact opposite.
1800s were the saloons, and especially in your part of the world, saloons. I mean, you had dancing girls, which were prostitutes, and
Oh yeah,
had
and, but those are all still rampant, right?
commerce. You had commerce in that small environment. I
Uh,
mean, the Civil War branded uh, bounty hunters and outlaws, so that was true, and train robbers, and that could be economy based, financially based, because they couldn't earn a living, you
oh
know,
yeah. Oh well, that
from
definitely.
after
That's
being
a
a soldier. So yeah,
that's a very
so,
valid point. Well, that whole time period, of course, was called the Reconstruction, right? And of course, in the American history books, you go from the American Civil War to immediately the American West, right? Like you go from immediately 1865 to like 1873, and right, because there's this whole time period in between called Reconstruction, which is when you really find out how much of a bastard the U.S. government really was to its own people on any side,
mm,
and that's all very much skimmed over, all very much and out of that Reconstruction, right, is where you get Jesse James, Billy the Kid. You get these outlaws. They come from depression, and the next giant group of outlaw mania in America would be post World War I to about the mid 30s. And that, those gangsters, Bonnie and Clyde, Babyface Nelson, Al Capone, those again are products of a depression, right? And
mm,
so it's interesting how the history books go. They skip over the Reconstruction of America from 65 to 70. They skip over post World War. They say, oh, there was this thing called the Dust Bowl and the Depression, and boy, was it bad. But nobody says, oh, why did that happen? What's going on? What was the decisions made? And then,
mm,
and I think that is why a lot of, that's why people that's why the American West as a genre has been stifled. Because I think the entire point of it is to be free and independent and think for yourself and try to be good to other people as you want them to be good to you. And fuck everything, all that is against whatever narrative is being drawn now, right?
mm. I
And that's
mean,
just my opinion.
what do you? But There's so many iterations of Billy the Kid, for example,
Hmm.
that's untrue.
Yeah. And which one is true?
Yeah,
Do we even
exactly.
know?
Which one is true? I mean, they tell the real story of. I'm going to skip right ahead here of his death. All right, and he got shot from a window because
Yeah.
he was visiting his girlfriend. All right,
Yeah.
and Pat
Assassinated. He was
and
assassinated.
yeah, Pat Cash assassinated
Yeah.
him from a window. But these westerns tell it so differently, which kind of irks me a wee bit because you're not telling the real story how he died. You're
Well,
telling a
yeah.
some of these westerns, yes, they're good to watch, but I think some of these directors and writers need to actually say, look, we need to look at the brass tacks and the truth, how they lived and how they died. I mean, Jesse James' story with Brad Pitt, that was awesome because it told the story of in his latter days with Frank James and how he died.
Right.
Right? They
Well, right.
a
But
true so
contrary to that though, um, I thought that Brad Pitt movie, yes, there was a lot of historical things that were touched on that were never touched on previously in movies. Uh, but honestly, those last days of his life may be the most questionable, and it
okay.
may be the most fuzzy. And all in all, at the end of the day, with all of our DNA and all of our shit, nobody can confirm a Billy the Grave or a Jesse James grave. And so to say Brad Pitt, if we that movie with Brad Pitt, if we decide that's the thing. If we decide yes, he was actually killed by Bob Ford while he was adjusting the picture of a horse, then okay, that sounds great. But there's plenty of people out there who never believed that happened. Bob Ford and everybody was all in on it, and it was a big fake death so he could live his life. And it was the same thing with Billy the Kid, right? I don't know all the ins and outs of Jesse and Bob Ford's relationship, but I do know it extensively, the relationship between Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And there is nothing in that relationship that would ever dictate or show at any point that Pat Garrett would shoot him like that. And it all reads like Pat helped his buddy get out of the country, you know, and I don't even know if Billy the Kid was ever actually killed at Fort Sumner by Pat Garrett. I don't know that. I don't know. I do know this. Do you know that Pat Garrett was mysteriously assassinated on a road years later when he was after he quit working for the government of New Mexico, and he was writing books, and he was going around and he was talking about how corrupt the government was, and he got assassinated.
All right. Okay.
Right? So it's just like every bit of that story is like I don't know if any of that. We do know that Billy the Kid shot Bob Ollinger with a shotgun because 30 people saw that, right? And there's a few things like that we do all know. And every time they robbed a bank because there was 9 people in there. But man, a lot of that really intricate shit that I don't know. I don't know if that Brad Pitt movie was. I agree that all historians have agreed that that's what we'll say. But for every historian that says that, there's another one that says no. Jesse James lived to be a ripe old age, So I don't know I don't know what's true.
That begins the whole conversation on the inaccuracies of Western films, then, doesn't it?
Well, the inaccuracies may be inaccuracies on the minute details of things like that, maybe, but I believe that the message of a Western, and I think that the show Deadwood, which has long been off the air, but it's one of the newer Westerns, right? Mm-hmm. The point of a Western genre is that you as a human being are responsible for who you are, right? And it is not the government. It is not, you don't go across the street and smack your neighbor because you're scared of the police or you're scared of the you don't act like that because that's not correct. And I think that's what Westerns are. There was no law to make you behave in any way except what you believe to be right. And there was, for every person out there that was raping and killing and stealing, there was other people who were not wanting that to happen. And the American West was not the first time. Like, I don't know why the American West gets the only blame for this, right? I mean, like...
Oh, no. I mean, there's a lot of countries, especially we did have a lawless country here in New Zealand.
Oh, I bet.
We didn't have sheriffs, but we had constables. Mm-hmm. Even in Ned Kelly's days in Australia, it was a lawless country.
Yeah, well, Ned Kelly is definitely like a Western movie, is it not? I mean, it's Australia and all that, but that's if you go to the movie place, that's in Westerns,
Yeah, I mean, there were corrupt constables who killed families of Irish descent because they didn't want them in their own in Australia, and most of the constables were Irish, so they were enforcing a law that really was unjust.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I mean, to swing back around to Deadwood, yes, it was an unjust town with a mob boss being set in a Western town, and a Timothy Oldenplatt sheriff who had to work with him. So it was like,
and And by the time that series was over, though, did you not realize? Did you not see that the mob boss, who was right? Like somebody has to wear the white hat and somebody has to wear the black hat. I think that was the other part. Is of course you have to have somebody cast as this character and you have to have somebody cast as that character. But in reality, you see that Ian McShane, was a very just person and was a very righteous person, and he loved deeply, did he not?
Yeah,
And when
be it
he,
ruthless ways. I mean, Powers Booth came into that
oh, he
story.
was an evil fucker, wasn't he?
Freaking brilliant. God bless that man, where he was up there. But
Yeah,
he was brilliant in it because
he
he was
was.
he was the antagonist of this.
Yeah.
It's
Well, yeah, and
brilliant.
that's the thing. You think that Swearingen, you go, oh, wow, look at this bad. He's a bad dude. This guy's evil as fuck. But then you realize, oh, dude, this man, he loves his family, and and it's like, why would you not want to carry on things that he's trying to do? Now, we're not saying that every part of it is shiny clean, but Timothy Oldplant's character is the same way. Like there's a bunch of shit going on, but you know what's right. I always thought that was the coolest. That to me is what the American Western genre is about. Is that no, it's all up to you. It's up to you. It's just like that game Red Dead, right? But it's just a game, so nobody gets it. But it is all up to you. You can walk through town and you can say, "Good morning, how are you?" And you can open the door for people, and you can pet the dog on the head, or you can fucking kick the dog and be mean. I mean, and that's just, And
Wasn't
look, the American West, this country
his
would have never became what it did if there wasn't more good people than bad people. I think that
well,
proof's in the pudding there.
wasn't the West made
Hey,
for?
Cat.
Oh, hey, Cat.
Sorry.
Wasn't West made for people of uh, a different land to actually set up land? I mean that was depicted in uh, a Tom Cruise film, Ron Howard film, Far and Away. It was a land grab.
Yeah.
It was mainly a race to get a land grab. In the West.
Well, yeah, it was a land grab race between citizens.
Yeah. I mean,
Between citizens. That was a big part of the Deadwood show, also, if you remember. They annexed that, and that is all exact. That is all completely true. The Dakota territories were annexed to the natives, and then the government realized that they gave the Indians a bunch of gold, and they thought, "Oh shit, how we can't have that." And one of the most interesting parts of that show to me, which is why it got canceled, in my opinion, all these shows that get canceled from nowhere, and people go, "Oh, what happened? Do you know why that show got canceled?" There was a scene where the sheriff's character they have to run for sheriff now because they're real, like they're not appointed. He has to run, and he's going to give his speech, and he goes over to the army guys, and he asks those army guys. He says, "Have you been who were you told to vote for?" And the army guy looks at him and says, "We ain't been told yet." And if you notice in that show, that's how George Hearst gets the votes. He has his friends at the government get a bunch of military guys and send them over to a town where there's more of it, right? And tells them to don't vote for Lack, vote for Peter. And what's interesting, and you'll notice that the fucking show sorry to say the F-bomb in your face, Peter, I apologize. But you'll notice that the show got canceled immediately after that episode. When the government soldiers, when it was understood that's how that show got shit canned right away. And I don't know if y'all know anything about Alaskan history, because being from Alaska, the American West is still very much alive. The American West is still very much alive where I'm from. There are villages where state troopers do not go, and when they send them, they don't come back, and they don't investigate it because they don't investigate it. They don't investigate it because there's nothing to investigate. Like it's just when you're out in the middle of the wilderness, all your CIS and all your bullshit now means nothing. Like it means nothing. Like short of getting a helicopter with a thermal fucking scanning and coming and getting them, You're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. But in the history of the state of Alaska, there was a guy who I knew. His name was Joe Vogler. He was very famous. Y'all should look him up. He was murdered, uh, but he went to the United Nations of all places, and he was trying to get Alaska to secede, to annex from the United States. He was the guy who wanted Alaska to secede from the Union for years. And his stipulation, why it was to be legally had, was that when Alaska was put to vote to be a state, on the ballot, there was no principality. It was statehood or territory. And there was no third option. And so he found this out. G-Force, how you doing? He found this out. He did the research. And he went to the United Nations because he wanted a congressional vote from Alaskans to secede, in a legal way. And you better believe that guy was killed. That guy was killed literally 3 weeks later. And like if you go to Alaska, it's been quite a few years, but Joe Vogler is like, he's a guy on bumper stickers. Joe Vogler for president. I met him when I was a kid, and he was like this. He was like the John Wayne of Alaska. It was amazing for a kid to meet this person. But in regards to Deadwood, what happened when Alaska became a state? The U.S. government sent thousands of soldiers up there, and they were all told to vote for statehood. And like that is completely illegal. Most of the time, that might not fly now, but I don't know what the government does now. I still don't trust them. But that's why Alaska was a state. Is the same thing that happened in Deadwood. And so, like, when that scene in Deadwood happened, it made me tear up because it was so real, and then it blew my mind to think that a lot of people I know in society don't understand that what you're watching in Deadwood is actually happening right now. It's happening right now. And when that scene happened, Peter, as soon as that episode was over, I said to myself, "Oh, this show will be canceled next week." And it was. And it absolutely never showed its face of light again.
Until the movie.
10 years later.
10 years later. Yeah. Yeah.
Which was conspicuously absent of any government. Did you notice that? There was no government mention of nothing. Yeah. Fucking. Do you have stories like that in your country, like Ned Kelly type heroes from that time period?
Not heroes. We had
or people. I'm sorry.
I could tell you the story of my hometown way back in the 1800s as well. A group of men came over, cutthroats from Ireland and called the Burns Gang. And they headed to the South Island of North Island in the 1800s. And we, here in New Zealand, it was like we were coexisting with the Maori population. I mean, but these guys were just were pretty ruthless. They just waited on a roadside, a big, dirty, gravelly roadside, because these payloads came down this track daily, and just people with money. So they waited in the trees by the track and shot dead in cold blood the travelers and pinched their money, and then they would go out and party up with this money and say, "Oh fuck yeah," kind of killing anybody they would see. Ruthless, bloodthirsty bastards who just didn't give a shit.
Highwaymen, we call them in this country, or we did. Highwaymen. Highwaymen. Is that a term in your country?
Yep. Yeah, highwaymen.
I think that's a British term, right? Like that's really from the old England days, right?
Probably, we would call them highwaymen instead of bounty hunters because they weren't bounty hunters. They were killers.
They were robbers. They were thieves and robbers.
Thieves.
Yeah.
They didn't really have much of a life, really, outside of that. They were just braggarts, if you want to call it an old
Right.
word. Um, you know,
They didn't
um,
end up having any cool Jesse James types legacy.
no, but they were famous because their court case was like big in New Zealand
Oh,
at the
really?
time because it's like they were trying to dispute the facts that really, you know, about killing these poor unfortunate guys on horseback or donkeys or whatever you call it, right?
Yeah.
Counting money, and they eventually got hung, and we still got the death masks in my hometown,
Oh,
uh,
really?
in Nelson. So it was a pretty
Hello,
big
Bill.
case, Bill. Pretty big
How many?
case.
You said it's the is it Bird like Byrd? Bird.
Burns,
Oh,
like
Burns. Oh, I
Burns.
apologize.
Yeah.
Burns. I'll have to
So
look that up because that's always interesting.
it
Uh
was you just look up Munga Tapu murderers because that's the track that they
oh.
um, that's the track was called Munga Tapu, was like a Maori name.
Uh huh.
So it's where they killed most of um, their prey, you could say.
Hmm.
But they were ruthless, mate. I mean,
Yeah.
they weren't
Well, that
like
was the
they weren't like Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly had a reason to actually do what he did. Right?
right. He was supposed to be right.
He wanted to defend his family who were getting hassled by the constables day in, day out. I mean, Ned Kelly's mother was imprisoned for no reason at all because they wanted Ned Kelly, right?
Right.
So, and how that came about. I mean, the rest of them burnt and killed and shot themselves in a house.
Yeah.
Or in a bar, whatever. So, and then Ned
Yeah. They
Kelly,
were in a barn or something, right?
yeah, and then Ned Kelly, you know what the story is that Ned
Oh
Kelly.
yeah. Oh, I know the story.
So
I knew the story before Mick Jagger made that movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but God rest his soul, Heath Ledger played a really good depiction of Ned Kelly. Cool, you know. So, um, but yeah, I mean, we didn't really have any sheriffs here who were famous.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
We had Maori chiefs who were famous
Hmm.
and travelled almost the length and breadth of uh, the North Island just to get away from the constables
Yeah.
because something happened because of land. You know, I mean, in this country
Right.
in that time was the gold rush days, the land grab, the Maori wars against their own people. Then you had the colonial wars with the Maori and Europeans, booting some of the Europeans out of the country because they were just raping the land and raping Maori women and stuff like that. And then you had the introduction of guns to Maoris instead of because they were using taihas and greenstone machete type thing weapons.
Hmm.
But they got introduced. Um,
What year
uh,
was that? The
uh,
introduction of the gun, you think?
yeah, that's a good question. Probably
Roughly.
18. Well, still 1800s. Probably 18. Probably I would guess on the verge of 1889.
Oh, really? Wow, that far into it. Wow.
I
Wow,
think.
wow, that's cool.
People don't quote me on that. I could be absolutely wrong on those
No, no,
dates.
I just anything in that to me, the reason I asked is just the technological advances of firearms in the entire world between say 1840 and 1900, hell even 1860 and 1880. The techno leaps and bounds happened in those years. And so it was interesting to see, at least like in this country, you had natives that were armed with firearms as early as the 1600s, which of course were single shot muzzle loading, some of them even matchlocks. But then by 1870, in the 1870s in this country, right? Everyone's familiar with Custer's Last Stand, the Battle of
Yeah,
Greasy Grass.
yeah.
One of the reasons, now of course there was over 5,000 Indians, but at that time the U.S. military were armed with single shot rifles, right? And every native worth their sand had already stolen a Winchester repeating rifle, and that was one of the big problems that the U.S. military had. Is
Well,
they were fighting the wrong war they were fighting in the
there's
wrong style, and they had to adapt.
interesting story that last stand of Custer.
Hmm.
It was that's always intrigued me because it was just a callous act, really, wasn't it? Really, to be quite honest with you, I mean,
Oh, of him?
he got what he deserved. Um, so I mean, it's always intrigued me, that story. It hasn't
Yeah.
been told. He hasn't been told in a Western film, basically at all. Because
Mm,
he's
I would say Little Big Man is probably one of the best ones. It's not solely about it, but it touches on it enough to, I think it definitely harkens to what you just said. Like yes, it was a very vain act of, and he was even going against orders from his commanding officers. It wasn't even for a long time. People wanted to play it like, oh, the U.S. government sent him out there to kill them, and it's like the U.S. government actually sent him out there to go look around and come back and tell us what was going on. So but you know what? Custer, he was a Union hero in the American Civil War. That's one thing that they don't ever say. And I'm not a fan of Custer. Don't get me wrong. I don't. I applaud the man, but he was a fucking hero in the American Civil War, and he did some amazing cavalry charges and was wounded multiple times.
yeah, but
He had
no one can forget what he did, right? What
yeah.
what he was going to do until
Yeah.
until it backfired.
Well, that's probably why they let him do it too, I guess, huh? Because they're like, well, that he sure did a hell of a job at Antietam. You
Mm.
know, just let
I
him.
mean,
He
just
was a crazy weird dude though.
yeah, I know he was. I mean, there is there is that's a fact because
Yeah.
I think he was changing his mind that he didn't. His herodom probably got to him, and then something
Yeah.
probably happened, and he
Yeah.
flipped almost. And
Well, maybe his hero dim. Maybe he was losing it. See, I always see some people. I know that has been thought. Oh, he went there because he was so vain and he thought that he was bulletproof. But maybe he went there because he thought that he wasn't right, because he was a hero 20 years before that, or what would that be, 17 years, 15 years before that, when he was a young man. And he hadn't really seen a lot of shit, and so
mm,
maybe he was not confident, and so he put himself in a position. People are always. I just always thought of it from a different point of view. Maybe he was out of confidence and he thought, I got to go down there and prove that I'm still a man or something.
well,
I don't know. I'm not saying that's right, but
I mean,
it could
that's it.
be.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think he wanted to go down there because maybe these generals or these colonels or captains were just a little bit sick of the American Indians, right? And they
Yeah,
wanted to, that whole horrible law that they want to kick the American indigenous Red Indians off their own land. So
right.
what does he go and do? He does the same thing that other soldiers do, right? Is go and massacre them, right, without warrant
Right.
or question, right?
Well, and not
So
all of them either, because
not all of
there
them, no.
always was.
So, yeah.
Yeah, even as early as even as early as Davy Crockett in the 1820s. Davy Crockett was one of the biggest and first proponents of American native rights. And when he was elected as the senator of Tennessee, that was one of his major things that he was elected on. And because he loved natives and he respected them, and he thought that there was a lot of shit Westerners. He saw how Westerners were used to be like natives were. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, because it's not a blood thing. It's a mindset. It's a culture thing. It's a living one. It's living with the land, off the earth, with your creator, which is whatever you want to call it. It's all of this. And so that's where the disconnect comes, I think, right? Davy Crockett was a spiritual man who knew the earth turned and knew all the shit natives knew because he lived the fuck outside. And that was one of his biggest things when he wanted to be a senator, is he wanted to fight for their rights. And his good buddy, Andrew Jackson, who also on a personal level was a friend of the natives, but when he became president, he could not say that. And like that and that's documented in a lot. Even the Disney movie, it's interesting that they show Fess Parker talking to the Andrew Jackson character, and Andrew Jackson pisses him off because he tells him, Davy, we can't help them Indians. Nobody wants that. You're on your own. And even in the
Mhm.
Disney movie, they show that. Now, in the Disney movie, Davy leaves and goes home, and then his wife dies, and then he gets fed up with the world. But that's not actually how it happened, right? His wife died, and then he put his life effort into helping the native. And then his own government told him, "Fuck you, dude. You are now our enemy because you don't want to be part of the club." And then Davy Crockett laid down all his shit and he quit the U.S. Senate and he went off to Texas to to do his one last thing. And like that's what he was doing. And like all of us as humans, and I'm sure all of us as men have felt that, right? Like like motherfucker, y'all, is that it? Okay, that's it. All right.
Mm.
And that's what he said. He said, "Oh, you want to fucking play that game? Okay." And he
Mm.
fucking put his shit down and he left, right? And like that's the Western way too, right? What does Waylon Jennings say? He's not wrong. He's just different. And most people don't like him. Them that don't like him won't. Them that don't know him won't like him, and them that do sometimes won't get him, right? Uh, God, I can't remember the next part. Shit, that's my favorite line in any song. But the point is that he's not going to convince you. He's not going to convince you that he's right. He's going to simply ride away because you're not fucking worth. Because that's what being John Wayne is. That's what the Western genre is, right? It's the same thing as fuck. It's the same thing Bruce Lee always preached, right? I will be whatever I need to be in your mind, and that means very little because I know who I am and my creator knows who I am, and that's all that fucking matters. And
Mm.
that's what the Western genre was about, I
I
believe.
guess I
You
guess
know,
they were wanting to. I guess that it's a sense of freedom,
yeah, independence, I think.
independence, and independence with freedom, even if they
Yeah,
don't get it or don't
yeah.
want it or don't see it happening. I mean, or have it, but really they die without or get killed off. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I mean, uh,
No, I'm
especially
following you.
especially the Alamo, of course.
Hmm.
But um,
The whole native mindset. Look at Geronimo and Masai, and they're trying to put these guys on reservations, and they would rather die than to live like that.
mm,
Now that's a fucking commitment. When like everybody wants to watch Star Wars and watch Andor and watch all this shit, and everybody would really like to think I would die for what I believe in. But you know what? When motherfuckers around you start dying, all of a sudden all of a sudden motherfuckers don't believe in that shit that much, and that's how it really is. But in the West, when people were born and lived and died knowing that there was no one to fucking count on but themselves and their loved ones, right? Maybe that's where that comes from because now, shit, now we live in a society where everybody's looking for somebody else to fix their shit for them, right? I mean, literally, everybody needs to go get a job from someone else, right? Everybody needs the government to do this. Everybody needs someone else to fucking do something for them, you know? 150 years ago, just like in the fucking game Red Dead, right? People were like, "Hey, let's cut this tree down and make a boat. Let's make a ferry right here on this river and charge people 25 cents to cross it." You dig what I'm saying? Like, that's capitalism. There's shit. There's real shit. You can't even do anything like that in the world now, right? My kid can't put up a lemonade stand,
It's a different
sir.
time. It's a different time. So
It is, but that doesn't make it okay?
There is inklings of yesteryear, right? There's around the world who still make their own kayaks, canoes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's still that. There's still freedom in other cultures who do that. I mean, let's not us negate that because I mean, even in your country, there's still people on ranches who like.
Oh yeah.
Who
No, I mean, I grew up in that. You are correct.
We see that in Yellowstone, and we see that in that the West is still prevalent in your country.
Right? It is. But it is prevalent. I agree with you 100% because I was raised in that. I mean, I was raised in that, and can go back there and it will be pretty much the same. But the part of it that lives in this country, it's not because of the time period. It's not because of the yesteryear. It is because of the mindset and the heart, which I think goes back to when I was saying the whole idea of the West is that I will be this honorable, good person because that's what I want to be, right? It's not because I'm scared of the cops or the constables or I'm scared of even going to hell or meeting a maker or any of that, It's about laying down at night and fucking feeling okay about what I did today. I think that is the real message. I know that's definitely the message when you look at Westerns. When you were talking about the West maybe ending more at World War I instead of World War II. One of the big people I think about is Gene Autry. And I don't know if that's a name that you're familiar with in your country, because that might be an obscure thing outside of America. I
mean, I know Gene Autry, but
you know who that is? Okay.
But probably just the name. I don't really know that.
Well, he was a very famous cowboy, obviously, and not even just a actor. Like John Wayne was a cowboy actor, but Gene Autry was like a cowboy. And like he was Gene Autry all the time. Like John Wayne was a guy in a movie and a guy in a movie. Gene Autry his name was Gene Autry. His horse was Champ. He played Gene Autry in every movie he ever made. He was that, right? And he was big into the wildcatting era of Texas and everything, which is in the 30s and 40s. And like some of his movies are amazing because he's on his horse and he's chasing down a guy in a Model T Ford, and like instead of jumping from his horse to the wagon, like in Stagecoach, he jumps from his horse to a 1947 World War II Jeep, and he beats the guy up and and it's like fucking Gene Autry was a goddamn cowboy up until, I mean, he was it, man. And he preached the lifestyle. I think it was obviously turned way up, he was the singing cowboy and he had the guitar and the yippee-ki-yay.
Now you got it. Now,
right.
Yeah.
But Gene Autry did pull his gun out and shoot the bad guy in the chest and kill him. Gene Autry did get in a fist fight and punch people in the right there. It was just like John Wayne. Like, you can be all these good things, but when it's time, you need to know it's time. And just because this guy is singing on his horse, yippee ki yay, I'm happy to and fro. It doesn't mean that he's an easy target, because all of a sudden he can outrope, outride, outshoot, and outfight anybody in the whole place. Hopalong Cassidy was a lot like that, but he was a little darker. He was a little darker. And look at Lash LaRue. Lash LaRue was, you know, if you want to take westerns and start to compare them to like our last show in superheroes, right? So remember we were talking about how superheroes were pretty badass. Like, like the Phantom would empty his 45 in your chest. And then all of a sudden, like Batman and Superman didn't kill anybody for years. They didn't do anything. And like westerns there was that thing with westerns too. It was like, how do you be a good guy but not do bad shit? And then Clint Eastwood came out in the 70s, right? And the first 5 minutes of a movie, walked into a place and raped a woman. Raped her in the barn. And everybody went, oh, is he the good guy? Oh,
Right.
wait a minute. He's the good guy?
Was a High Plains Drifter?
High Plains Drifter, yeah.
Yeah.
And you think, oh shit, man, I thought I used to like Clint Eastwood, but he just raped some chick. Oh my God, this isn't right. And it's like now all of a sudden, like, right, people want to watch Marvel movies and they want to watch Westworld and they want to watch all this fantasy shit, and they go, oh my God, this is so crazy. And it's like, look at a fucking real Western. And the motherfucker walked in town and fucking raped the chick in the middle of the fucking daylight, and nobody did anything because they were scared of him because he'd probably shoot him. Why do you need to watch Marvel fantasy movies? There's some fucking real shit going down that's fucking extra. Like, you want to talk about something to learn from, something that'll grip your fucking attention. Annie Oakley, I'm looking in the chat. Yeah, I loved Annie Oakley too. She was amazing.
I got to say a couple of hellos. I'm just actually looking at.
Are you?
Yeah, because I can't read it on here. I don't know why I can't read it on here.
I'm real bad at when I'm living. I can't chat because I'm not technologically advanced.
Okay, well, hey, Mr. B, is it Orlando? I know you're in the chat. Hello.
I do want to say hello. I love all you people.
G-Force.
High Plains Drifter. I watched that 2 weeks back. Yeah.
Cat Dylan.
Keep on. Good to see you.
Oh, it's Keep
Dylan?
On. Hi, Emmett. Hey.
Yeah. I just seen him.
I watched that 2 weeks and thought
the Searchers. Yeah, I thought the same thing. When you were saying The Searchers, the Searchers were one of those movies where, like, and of course John Wayne, Ethan, he doesn't rape a woman in the movie, but there's a whole, if you pay attention to that movie, which I know you do and a lot of us, but is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? He's mad as shit, and it's justified, but is it justified? And then look, by the end of the movie, he totally changes his whole shit, right? Because he's gonna kill her. He's gonna kill his own niece because she's been fucking. I can't remember what the word he used, But he was gonna put his niece out of her misery, like a dying, right? Remember that he was gonna, and then he realized he needs to help her and save her and try to help her through this, and that's why.
He comes to realize that he needs to actually desensitize her.
Yeah.
Because she was in that way of life of the Native American for life. That's why they kind of they kidnapped her. Killed the parents and kidnapped her. Right.
Yeah. So, talk about the extreme PTSD.
I mean,
being kidnapped and then ravaged by.
She didn't go back to where her old life was because she didn't really know her whole life, right? Her whole life was being brought up in a Native American set.
Right.
She was kidnapped when she was a kid. So that means she was angry, he was angry, and the whole pain of it. That's why John Wayne's character, so what do I do? What do I do? Do I put her out of her misery or do I help her? He went the right route and said, look, we're going to actually desensitize you back to your home, your real home, not the home that you were living in. And that's harder than it looks, but that's what the realization. with his character. He chose not to shoot and kill her because that's the probably he thought, well, no, I'll be just murdering my own niece. That's the coward's way out, right? And she's my niece. I'm not going to kill my niece.
Well, I think he found hope, right? Wasn't there was a conversation that he had with what was that? His brother, that old lady who he came back and talked to that one time. She said something to him, and that made him start thinking about that, and he realized that there was. I don't know if he chose the right thing as far as that he already knew. I don't think he knew that was an option. I think that
I
was
think,
what was. He
I
went,
think
oh my gosh.
are you right? There was hope. I think there was
Yeah,
a little bit of inkling in her eye, in Natalie Wood's eye as her character, that
right.
she
And
spoke.
he had time to think about it too.
Yeah, yeah.
He
I
had
mean,
time to think about it.
I don't
Because
think
see,
that he wanted to kill his own niece, though.
right. Well, and see, I think part of it also. I think part of it is that it's kind of like Old Yeller, like no one today. Hell, I have a relative who just kept their dog alive, who they should have put down, because they couldn't handle it, right? So I think maybe John Wayne's character also it was like an Old Yeller, like he never looked at it as killing his own niece or even doing her a disservice. He was raised, right? Because he's a fucking 60-year-old man. He just came back from the Civil War. You better believe he probably slit a bunch of guys' throats that were his friends on the battlefield, so that because that's what you do. Look at Swearingen when he killed the preacher, right? Like there is a real thing as a mercy killing that is not evil, and I it may be hard to debate that. That might be only a conversation that we can have when we're dead and gone with the Creator. But there's definitely enough evidence for us as humans to see that there is definitely a possibility that mercy killing there is instances where it's not wrong. Like Old Yeller, right? Or when we do it for our pets all the time. But somehow when your grandmother wants Dr. Kevorkian to do it, it's all of a sudden my personal business, right? I'm just saying, and so maybe Ethan from the Searchers, right? Because like that's an idea that is not around anymore, right? Like nobody would go shoot their dog like Old Yeller, and like where I'm from, that happens, and like it's a huge point in a young man's life when you have that first dog, and that at some point something happens that it has no quality of life, and you, as the person who is responsible for it, needs to do the right thing. The right thing ain't fucking what you like, and it ain't all rosy and sweet. And I think maybe Ethan, I think that's where he was coming from, and then he realized there was another option. Because I don't think Ethan was ever an evil person. I think maybe he was upset and angry, but that never makes a person evil. You know, I don't
No,
think.
yeah, I don't think he was evil either. I mean, yes, he was a soldier. He even when he was searching, he was still a soldier.
Yeah.
So I think he knew from right from wrong. But I think in his heart, in his heart of hearts, that he found hope for his
Yeah.
niece, right? Not to kill her. That's the main deal, really. Right. Well, look at the nightlife behind you. That's nice.
Yeah. So you like that?
It's
I thought
good.
I'd get out of the shadow. I get really good internet service right here, so I've been doing some lives from here. So fuck it.
But westerns, I mean, I did actually have it on the prime mode that westerns from, 1930s to 1800s to the Hollywood age to around the world have changed, but they kind of still actually stayed the same, haven't they? Really, in that same essence.
In a sense, I think there's some that went away, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at Yellowstone. Yellowstone's a fantastic example of a modern day Western, really, isn't it? You
Uh,
know?
yeah, is the new season started?
Not yet.
Okay, I really need to rewatch. Shit, they come so far apart. By the time two comes, I think shit, I got to rewatch one.
Yeah. Sheridan's
Um,
quick on the mark with this. Sorry.
I'm so sorry, Blue Sasquatch. I just saw that Blue said he can't sit outside because it's too cold. It's not too
Hey,
bad
Blue.
here, but the mosquitoes are starting to come out, so it's
Yeah.
it's not that nice.
So, well, you live in.
I think that Yellowstone is a good show, but I mean, I don't know. I have some. I would like to go. I would like to go work on that show. I I had a cousin who is a grip or something
Key
in
grip.
yeah, key grip, and and when I used to guide, and I went to Wrangler school, and I did a lot of shit to become a guide because when I grew up in Alaska, we don't have horses. In the interior of Alaska, we don't have horses. So I always grew up being an Indian, right? But of course, I always wanted to be a cowboy. So I went and got these jobs guiding on horse, which is just like these movies, right? When they have mules with all their shit on it. Like I did that for a living, and I fucking loved it. And I worked on some ranches and shit. But anyway, so I decided I wanted to be a cowboy, and I became a cowboy. And I learned how to rope and shoe horses and do everything, man. And I was talking to my cousin because I wanted to be a wrangler in the movies. And I did a bunch of shit and filled out a bunch of shit and had him talk to these guys. But it is apparently such a closed thing that like they didn't even want to talk to me. And they wouldn't even hardly talk to my cousin who's been in that industry for a long time. And like
Strange that I would have thought they probably want more wranglers in that sector than anything else.
I think
Uh,
I think I think that they're guarding it. I think is probably what it is. And I maybe can understand that. I don't know. They feel like they're probably a
unless
dying shits.
I think there's still the old adage saying is that it's what we say here and everybody says here in that industry. It's not what you know; it's who you know, and
Yeah.
you know somebody. So I don't know why that's guarded so much. I mean, you could have got
Yeah.
a job on a set doing a wrangler
I
job.
think that would be, yeah. I mean,
Um,
that was years ago, and maybe he was fucking just sticking me off. I don't think he was though. Um,
Hey, Blaze, Blue.
hey Blaze, oh, I saw Blue Harvest. Hello, Mark. Hey,
Uh,
Mark, how's your trip? Everyone wish Mark a happy birthday. I think
oh,
it's Friday. Friday, not now, not today, but his birthday's Friday.
hey, Mark.
I'm pretty.
Happy birthday, mate. Happy birthday. It's not it's not your British accent, but happy birthday, mate.
Is that your British accent?
Well, it's
That's
there's
awful. That's worse than my New Zealand accent. I can't do New Zealand, but I do love Australia. This is my best. You want to hear it? Motherfucker! I just heard an Australian guy say that the other day, and I was like, oh, I can say that. Motherfucker! It's
I've
yeah.
always liked Jim Carrey's version.
I've never
G'day,
heard.
mate.
G'day, mate. What did he do that in a movie? What movie was that?
No, Dumb and Dumber. He stuck his
Oh,
head
I
out.
haven't seen that in forever.
He stuck his head out of the cat because he saw an Aussie woman, right?
Uh-huh.
He's Australian. He stuck his head out going, "G'day, mate."
I have not seen that in forever. That's awesome. That could have almost been a. You know what? You know what else I think? Hey, speaking of crazy movies, you want to know what's a fucking Western movie that no one I think will agree with me on this, but you know what's a Western movie? The Big Lebowski.
Oh, yes.
The Big Lebowski is a fucking Western. If those guys are not cowboys doing what they fucking think is right, if that's not a Western, what the fuck is a Western, man? That's a Western right there, baby. It is.
Man. Dude, man, you just.
Dude, man. Look, hey, there are rules, man. This is not Nom. There are rules. Oh, did you see Justified with Timothy
Oh,
Olyphant.
one of my favorite series is Justified.
Yeah, fuck yeah, that's Western. That's a
Yeah,
Western.
it's a
That is a
Western.
Western That is a
Um,
Western show.
well,
The
that's
motherfucker even has a cowboy hat.
I
Proof.
know you don't like Star Wars, but he played a sheriff.
Oh, he
In
was a cat. Yeah,
cowboy. He was
he
a
was a cowboy. Yeah,
yeah.
it was great.
He
That
was
was the greatest thing about that whole fucking show was that they brought Timothy Olyphant in. I was like, oh great, they have taste.
Cobb Vanth is a Western name.
Yeah, totally. I before they ever showed us who what's his name Pasquinelli or whatever, I was positive that Timothy Olyphant was still doing the voice for the Mando. Like in the first episodes, from the very beginning, I was like, "Is that Timothy Olyphant?" Like I know it wasn't him under the thing, but I
Mm,
kept going, "God, that sounds like him." But then when he showed up, I was like, "That's Timothy." I could tell by the way he walked. His
yeah,
shoulders, I could tell how his shoulders are kinked. I was like, that's goddamn Justified
yeah.
under that fucking helmet. I was like, "You're
It's
not fooling this motherfucker."
it's Timothy Olyphant's walk. It's just like a.
He's like doing a John Wayne impression,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah,
Basically,
he's
yeah.
like doing a John Wayne impression. It's awesome. I love that guy. I
All
mean,
he
I don't
needs,
know if he's
all he needs is a drink of milk on a horse.
eh,
Your friend.
is he where's he from? He's from your part of the world, isn't he? Or is he an American?
No, he's American.
Is he?
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. He's not. No, he's not. Timothy, you
I
mean?
could
Yeah.
have
Timothy
Yeah,
Olyphant.
I
Yeah.
thought he was
No, no,
I don't know
no.
why I thought that.
He if he was from here, he would have had a stronger lilt of a Kiwi accent. So
Oh, because you can't get rid of it. Like no actor could even remotely try to
no,
get rid
I
of it.
mean
That Charlize that
Carly,
Charlize Theron is from Africa, but she got rid of
Africa,
her.
she got rid
But
of
I mean,
hers. So,
I work with a lot of South Africans, and like those motherfuckers, you can't hardly understand it. I mean, they talk thick, and she talks better than anybody, you
I
know.
mean, look at Liam Neeson. He's been in
Uh,
America for years, and he's still got an Irish accent. So
yeah, but
um,
kind of. He's
yeah,
definitely. Did
he's
you
he's
see
he's
Next of Kin?
bastardized. He's bastardized.
Oh, is he? Is that
So,
what
but
you
he
call it?
still uses his lilt, Irish lilt, a lot more than anything else.
Yeah.
So,
Did you ever see him and Swayze in Next of Kin?
no,
You've
no,
never seen that movie?
no.
Oh shit!
I should see it.
It's like from 1981. It's called Next of Kin, and what's his name? Patrick Swayze. I used to have a buddy named Bruce Swayze, and I always say their names wrong. I don't know why. But Patrick Swayze is a big city. It's kind of like Justified that Patrick Swayze is a big city Chicago cop or whatever, right? But he's from the hills of fucking Kentucky or whatever, and he brings some of his brothers up there to the city to make the life or whatever. Well, one of them gets murdered, and he has to investigate it. And then, of course, somehow in the investigation, shit goes awry, and he has to send back to the hill country for his fucking people. And one of them is fucking Qui-Gon Jinn.
Oh,
And
okay.
he's fucking,
All right.
and he's like, and he's got like and he's the baddest ass of them all with his
You said
chewing
something about
tobacco
this.
and
Liam
oh,
Neeson. Liam
I
Neeson,
say that.
Liam Neeson said something about next to Kim working with Patrick Swayze on that.
Oh, did he?
Talk show or something like that. But so yeah.
I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not his favorite movie he was in.
Probably not.
But it was pretty cool. It's fun to watch, man. It's fun to watch.
Again, I'm going to swing back to the modern day westerns.
Yeah.
The Mayor of Kingston. Mayor of Kingstown is probably a westernized.
I've only seen the first couple episodes of that, so I don't know.
Jeremy Renner, brilliant.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
The Fixer. You could call him a fixer because he's in between the cops and the prisoners. It's just brilliant.
Yeah.
King of Tulsa is probably based on a Western genre, being mob and so going back to Tulsa.
Outside of the.
Yeah. I think to say about the westerns in the movie industry, they're swinging back around to be a normal thing because
Yeah.
you're getting a lot of westerns from a lot of new westerns from last year to this year. So it's building up another resurgence because you didn't really see a westerns that often in 2019 to 2016. I don't think, and now it's
No, they tried to have a resurgence there. What was that? Appanose, Viggo Mortensen, and Ed Harris, and then Open Range with Robert Duvall and Kevin Costner. They tried to, and then the 310 to Yuma remake with the Gladiator or whatever. Those all came out about the same time. Oh, sorry, how did I do that? Haha. I don't even know how I did that. Sorry, I touched that on accident. So now I'm touching everybody's shit.
You pressed on their comments. Yeah, that's right.
I did. Uh-oh. I just locked myself out. Ah, no. No, they definitely was. There was trying to be a resurgence, and I don't know what years those were, but that was probably somebody would have to look those up. But those all came out like right at the same time. You know, they thought somebody said we're bringing back westerns. You know, and then they decided no, I guess we're not. You know, the remake to True Grit also came out around that time. You had 310 to Yuma, True Grit, Open Range, Appanose, and there was another one with there was another one with Robert Duvall, but it had what's his name, Hayden Church from Wings. What the fuck was that guy's name? Remember him, the mechanic from Wings?
Yeah. Thomas
Hayden Church.
Hayden Church.
Yeah, there was a movie that came out with him and Robert Duvall, and they were saving Chinese prostitutes because when the Chinese, this is all factual too, right? But when the Chinese were importing their own slave people to America to work on the railroads, the prostitutes were thought of as expendable, and they would not feed them, and so there were mass burnings of Chinese women prostitutes and like that. And that was an interesting thing that European Westerners said, no, man, you can't treat them whores that way. That was actually in Deadwood too, wasn't it? You know? So, so there's a lot of people out there that are way fucking worse. Oh, I forgot about that. That was an amazing part of Deadwood when Swearingen, of all people, is like, there will be no fucking stench of burning whore bodies on this day. Do you understand me, you motherfucker? You know? Like, man. Swearingen was not a bad dude.
Yeah, but he had his ruthless moments that was really depicted well by Ian McShane. I'm going to tell you.
Oh, I love Ian McShane. I want to fucking smoke a joint with Ian McShane so bad. I think that guy. I don't know. Maybe he's a total dick. What do I know? But he seems like he's probably a cool fucking guy.
I think he's a cool dude. He's just I think I know him. Yes, Pete, I know him.
Yeah. Well, now the parts of Swearingen that were ruthless, of course, he's ruthless, but was he unjustified in it? Like the first time when he decided not to kill the girl, but to kill the road agents.
I think it was just probably the money. He found financial worth in it. That's probably what his ruthlessness was, because he didn't want anything to actually come between his money and his business.
Right. Well, and was it his money, or was it providing for all the people he's responsible for? Because that's what you learn later, right? Like, unlike the James Bond villain who fucking doesn't even know his underlings, right? Unlike Skeletor, who thinks all his fucking minions are boobs, fucking Swearingen is like him and Dan are fucking tight. Like, him and Dan are brothers. They're equals. Like, everyone may think that Al is in charge and whatever, but like, Dan and Al are fucking brothers, man. They're tight. And Trixie and them are in love. You know, they love each other. You know?
I think it's the fact remains that Swearingen knew his people around him. He had to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because he had to know who he could trust and not
Yeah.
trust, right?
It's a family.
It's the family. But in
Yeah.
that family, if you don't trust anybody, then well,
They got to go.
shit's got to happen, isn't it? Really?
And
Right?
is
So
that any different than people today? I mean,
no, not
don't many people we
well.
all don't we
In
all
a
have to go
similar,
find those people
in a
that we
yeah,
can trust?
yeah, but in a sense, I think I gotta agree to disagree on this because in a sense, yes, there is, and no, there isn't. I think we have more compassion for our friends to trust them, to not to trust them. I think we have a more loving nature in a sense from back then, right? Because we have more things to do and more financial freedoms and more, you know, than back then, right? Some people have more financial success than others, which,
Yeah.
right?
Well, there's certainly more opportunity that's not
Oh,
laden with like
yes, yeah,
manual physical labor
right.
and shit.
But there are some bad people out there that yes do not trust, right? I mean, even friend or foe. Uh, so that's where my opinion would be at their lack. But I mean, would you trust me with your life? Yes or no? You know that
You do you want to?
to say
I
it.
have to tell you this.
To say it, yes, it's
No,
easy.
I
To
don't.
do
We don't know each other that
it,
well.
yeah. Well, yeah.
No, no.
So
For me, it's not because if you really ask that, I would, in a very sad way, have to say, well, no, Peter, I couldn't just leave you here for a month with my kids and say, here's a gun, because I don't know you like that. Do
exactly.
I believe that you are
Yeah.
a? Do I believe that you are a fucking good person? Yes, of course. Do I want to take the opportunity to know you more and get to know that you are a person that I could trust like that? Yes, I absolutely trust you enough to want to know that, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so yeah,
yeah.
so there's
True, I would agree.
it's not simple answer, you know. But
No,
now, are there
no,
people that I would give the opportunity
no,
to even see? No, fuck them,
no.
you know. But I know a
That
good person when I see
I
one.
agree with that. I agree with that entirely. I agree with that entirely. I mean, I don't know you either, so it's that well, and I want to get to know you, but you know, um, would I trust you to take out my invisible dog? No. So
Not even the dog.
no. Um, People are going to find out I don't have a dog. There we go. That's right.
You have a bunch of birds you keep outside your window.
Yeah, they're free birds. They're not
Oh,
mine.
are
So
they? Jim
um,
Largo has a rooster named Eduardo. I don't know if you watch him and if you watch Largo's Lair, or if you watch Weird Fantastic Toy Adventure, Bill, who was here earlier, um, you can hear Eduardo cockle-doodle doing in the background. It's hilarious.
Eduardo, what a cool name. It's so funny.
Uh,
So,
oh, look at
um,
G-Force. He says, "Am I trying to purposely trigger blue? What did I say something bad about James Bond?" You know, can I say this real quick? We all know that Blue is on a lovely trip for his birthday, and the other day we did the toy council, right? And afterwards,
yes.
he was telling me, he said, "Man, I have 3 bags." And I told him right away. I said, "Do you think motherfucking James Bond has 3 bags, or do you think he has 1 bag?" I said, "You need to. You have 3 bags." I said, "What are you, my fucking mom and my sister and my old lady? You have 3 bags for 3 days? Come on." Come on! You think James Bond has 3 bags, Mark? No, he's got 1 bag, and then the rest of the shit he needs is in his watch. Mark, you know I love you, Mark. Tell Paul hello. He's there with he. I think he met Paul. They're probably out drinking. Hello, Paul. If you're there,
Um, but, I mean,
Peter. The westerns is such to me it's westerns are so vast and so you know, it's like when you say a Marvel movie, that means Marvel movie, you know. But when you say Western, to at least me, who is a big fan, there's so much shit. You can go from Pancho Villa to the Man from Snowy River, you know, back to Jesse James, back to Ned Kelly, back to English highwaymen in the
Yeah.
1840s, which is still the same kind of problems, you
Back to the
know.
Tracker, because we've got a movie called The Tracker with uh, Ray Winston, which is brilliant. It's got Tim Morrison in it.
Really,
Uh,
I haven't seen that.
it's called The Tracker. It's Ray Winston. Ray Winston's character is South African, so he comes into this country, and Timura Morrison is uh, suspected criminal. So
Mhm.
his whereas Ray Winston's tracking his movements all around the country, through the bush,
Mhm.
uh, and it's a fantastic film. But,
I'm gonna look at it because I love Tamora Morrison. I mean, except that he's Boba Fett. I don't like that, but everything else I love. Everything else I love.
he's good in it too. He plays a
Is he?
convict, but he's a misjudged criminal, you could say. So
Right.
uh, the crime that he committed was he didn't commit the crime, it was somebody else. So um, uh, Ray Winston's great in it as well. You see the New Zealand landscape, the beach is really well shot. The British colony comes into it because these British officers, so it's
Mhm.
on that verge of 1800s to almost 1900s. So it's on the verge of that. So um, it's great because you see Ray Winston's character is African, so his final words. I don't want to spoil it for you, and here I'm going to, is that he hops in a boat going. I heard that there's a land in South Africa called Van Diemen's Land, because that's his name.
Mhm.
His last name is Van Diemen. So he goes, I think I might visit that Van Diemen's Land. You know, so
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
cool.
that's so yeah, it's really cool. So pretty good South African accent there, just for a second.
No, that's pretty good. I can't. I can't. Now I have hung out with. Gosh, I can't even remember. I used to hang out with the guys that are called Boros. Oh, all right, and look, I know these guys. These all I know about them is the group I used to hang out with was they were hunters from Africa, and they called themselves Boros, and all these guys looked the same. They were giant dudes, and they all had mullets, and they all had mustaches, and they were all big guys. Now I cut timber with some guys out here who are called who are also white South Africans, but they say no, we're not Boros, we're Afrikaans, okay? And they're all small, skinny, little wiry dudes, and none of them are over 200 pounds, and none of them wear mustaches, and they all shave their head. But the Boro guys are all 6'5" and 300 pounds, and all wear mullets. And like it's just very interesting to me, right? Because in America they'll tell you like, you know, white people have no culture and all this fucking crazy bullshit. But like you can plainly look at like South Africans and tell that this group of Caucasian, European, white South Africans are obviously a completely different group of fucking people than these ones. And they'll tell you that too, you know? And
Hmm.
and I don't know all about it because it's just something I observed. You know, I used to hang out with these. If you go hunting in Africa, you will always hang out with the guys with the mullets who are like all those professional hunters are that tribe, right? But when Mugabe became president and 15,000 South Africans migrated to the state of Florida, all those fuckers were Afrikaans, right? Because like the Boros wouldn't leave or something. I don't know all the ins and outs. This is just shit I pick up. But to me, again, it's like you could make a Western, you could, you know, look at the Boro Wars. But because of the time period and because of you have the natives and the non natives which in that story, the natives are even the same color and nationality as the non-natives. Uh-oh, that just put a fucking monkey wrench in your entire anti-Western fucking philosophy, didn't it?
Uh,
Right?
well,
But
it was the fact of apartheid, really, isn't it? It's the African apartheid.
yeah,
It's it, to on that note. I mean, America had the same thing,
yeah. Well, what's
apartheid.
Davy Crockett if he's not the same, right? I was
Um,
raised by Native Americans, and I
well,
look white. People make fun of
I
me,
mean,
but
um,
that's
but,
because it's a
but
mindset.
the thing is that it's horrible, absolutely bloody horrible, really. To be thought of that you can't go into a bathroom because it's white only.
Right.
Absolutely deplorable. So,
Or because it's anything only. Because it's anything only.
I mean, that's a whole other
Right?
topic. There's a whole other topic that
No,
it's
but yeah, well, I mean, it can be, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, I lived in the age where when we all had the debate of, well, affirmative action is okay, right? And like 30 years ago, we all said, no, affirmative action is actually the same thing, but you're saying that it's okay. So, and like we all decided that 30 years ago. And now there's like a new generation of people who are listening to the wrong folks because, like, there was a generation called Generation X, and then there was after that a generation called Generation Y that nobody wants to talk about. And like we fucking know all this shit. And only now, when we're all old, are these other people who are they listening to? They're obviously not listening to their parents. Where are these people's guides and guidance? Who is out there telling them this? Because it can't be somebody with their own. It can't be someone with that person's interests in their heart. Can't be. I think that's. I want to say this before I forget, and then you have the floor. A Western genre may be the only film genre that it's about the history of this country, and it's about the history of the people of this country, and it also is about the culture. People want to say that Westerners and Americans and whites and all these don't have culture, and like you need to watch these movies because all the good decent things, whether it's praying at the dinner table or doing whatever it is, that is the basis of this fucking country, like it or not. The government regulated side of the country that we see now doesn't have those morals. I mean, that's not where we're living, but Westerns, right? When you watch, is there any other country, like if you watch a movie about King Arthur, right? Like there's not a genre that's called English history. King Arthur is in a fucking, right? Robin Hood, those are all in like whatever. They're in action, or maybe they're in drama, like Hamlet, which is obviously not historical, but it is but I'm saying that might be in drama, right? But Western films basically means, this is, kind of the fictional story of the non-fictional shit that happened. There's no other genre that I'm aware of that has that except the genre of nonfiction historical, right?
mm, mm.
Is there anything else? There's not. So that must make it extremely fucking special.
Well, it's not. Let's say
You know?
it's not. I mean, Westerns haven't been bastardized, as
Mhm.
as to other films prior. One film which I won't mention. Um,
Oh,
and
you
that
might
was
have to mention it because I might not understand your reference.
it's
What do you mean bastard size?
it's Cowboys and Aliens by Jon Favreau.
Oh, oh Jesus!
That's
I didn't
kind of
even see that.
that's a mix and match film, which was bastardized, but uh, that's why I didn't mention it. No, I am.
Well, I didn't see it, so I can't really have any debate with you on that, which is fine.
The thing is that I love westerns because it does give you a broad sense of American history, even if it's accurate or inaccurate. Really, I mean, it gives
Right.
you
Well,
a history. It gives you a
no,
history
go ahead. I'm
lesson.
sorry.
It gives you a history lesson in the Civil War from outlaws and sheriffs and marshals, and it gives you an insight of really how the West was won. Really,
Yeah.
to use those cliche. I don't know. I don't know where I don't know where I'm going with this. I think I'm Westerns
Well,
have a huge part, and I think everybody's away.
yeah.
To be quite
Well, they
honest with you.
definitely do. And every country
Whoop.
has its frontier. You know, I mean, the the Mexican Revolution. I'm sitting here looking at my Pancho Villa poster, and like any movie that has Pancho Villa in it is a Western movie, is it not? You know, uh, yeah, there is
What's
no other historical.
wrong with your internet there, man? So
Oh no, am I out again? Hold on.
you're freezing, then coming in, then freezing. And coming in. So yeah. Oh, it's much better now. So
I'm back.
yeah,
Sorry,
so that's
I
all
had to
right.
check on. I had to check on something. I had an alarm, and I had to go look at it.
Um,
No, I was just saying when I was cutting out. I was just saying. Yeah, there are no genres that are historical like that, and we all countries and all histories have a oh gosh, they have a commonality with the American West because the American Western story is the story of humanity, right? It is the story of the human race, right? Because people came here and there was no law and you had to make the best of it because of who you were. That's what we were talking about, like how people play Red Dead. You can be a bastard shooting everyone you know in the face in the game, or you can just do what you need to do, right? And so
yeah, I do
is
agree
that
with.
not the story of humanity?
I do agree with the worldwide sense of the Western history because of the New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, uh, be it the country of England, having Europeans coming all over from there, and Americans coming from America to Australia to New Zealand if they could get over here, right? And being in the 1800s to the 1890s to
Mhm.
cover that whole storyline. I mean, that's how the West was probably introduced to us, having Europeans coming into our country or into Australia, right? To actually have outlaws and sheriffs and constables. I mean, we basically had the same thing as the West did, but Westerns were probably more prevalent because they had the Civil War, they had the French and Indian War. They had
Yeah, there
they
was a
had
lot more prehistory to it than say in um like I guess in New Zealand, right? Is that what you mean? Like there was a lot more activity in the continent here prior to your continent. Is that
because
what you
they had
mean?
a lot and they had a lot more land to give
Yeah.
Europeans,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Again, getting back to the land grab or the land grabs, I'll put a stake in the ground and that's my part of the land, right? So that's where I live, and then then the whole surroundings built around that. It's amazing, and we get westerns out of it. Right? We get
Yeah.
the Wyatt Earps out of it. We get the Billy the Kids out of it. We get the uh, Jesse James is out of it. We get the all those famous
Duh.
people
Yeah.
being done in the films
And
inaccurately or accurately. So
right.
so
Inaccurately or accurately. But the idea, well, and if you talk about that, it's like, we can expand that idea to people like Robin Hood, right? Like Robin Hood is the equivalent of, say, Jesse James, right? Because he was fighting for what he believed in. He was fighting for his family, which maybe the merry men, his band, his tribe, against the oppression of the fucking man. Now whether how much of it is accurate or inaccurate, right? Because there's that whole deal with Robin Hood too, right? Like, well, what was he doing? I don't. People tell me different stuff all the time. They decide that they're doing different shit. William Wallace's sword is not William Wallace's sword. It's just all of that.
Yeah,
But the idea that he portrays is what I think
yeah.
matters, right?
I guess that, I mean, yes, there was a guy called William Wallace, but he had to be quite brutally honest. It was Robert the Bruce who actually saved Scotland. Really,
Right. But don't tell Mel Gibson that.
no, exactly. Don't tell Mel Gibson that.
Don't tell Mel Gibson that.
So it's same with Robin Hood. He was just a mere peasant. He wasn't a hero figure like Kevin Costner turned him into be.
Right. Well, he certainly is now, though, isn't he?
Yeah, well,
Like
exactly.
he's
They made him,
right.
they made him out to be a folk hero, folklore hero, right?
Yeah.
So, your favorite character in the world, Scarlet Pimpernel, fought for the man, fought for the injustices of people, right? So he made a persona and called himself the Scarlet Pimpernel just to save people from,
Right.
And he was rich to do so. So he was probably the first Bruce Wayne of anything.
Oh yeah, definitely a Bruce Wayne type.
Yes.
And because of the time period, that revolution, that falls very close into the expansion of the American West. At that exact same time in America, the American government is fighting natives and pushing them from the East Coast to the West Coast. That's why, like, that's why the Cherokees are the largest Indian nation in the world, right? It's not because they're all Cherokees. It's because all the other tribes, they said, no, no, no. They said, no, no, I'm not a Huron Indian. I'm a Cherokee. We've already signed the treaty. I mean, that's why there's more Cherokees than anyone else. And that's why there are no Choctaws and there are no Chickasaws and there are no Mohicans, because they all couldn't be that, right? And they said, no, I'm a Cherokee. And that's why, and Cherokees are from the East Coast. Like, Cherokees are from the first place that was landed. But now Cherokees are from Oklahoma, right? That's what people think. Oh, yeah, Cherokee. No, they were marched there on the Trail of Tears, There's so much prehistory. And the American West, when you were talking about Billy the Kid and Jesse James, what's interesting is the beginning of the Civil War, let's say the end of the Civil War, which is marking the time period that we may call the American West, right? When Europeans started going westward and expanding, right? That actually is the death of the American West to the native. All of their life is already gone, right? Like, well, look at what Geronimo said in Masai and everything, like, what we think now is the beginning was actually the end. There are no more buffalo. There are no more people living on the earth with it. So everything that we mark as the beginning is actually quite possibly the end.
I gotta say this. I think Blue Sasquatch has got Google.
Yeah, well, he's Googling it up, ain't he?
Googling it up. So he did Pancho Villa, and now he's got Robin Hood. So Robin Hood is a legendary heroic outlaw originally depicted in England folklore and subsequently featured in literature and film. According to legend, he was a highly skilled archer and swordsman.
Do we know? Was he actually a crusader? Did we not find out? That's all bullshit, right? That's not even the same. That's like two different people that they're melding into one guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. The history says that it's inconclusive. Nobody knows who Robin Hood
Nobody knows
was.
who that he is. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, thanks, Blue, but no one knows
you, Blue.
who he was.
Because they used to tell you he came back from the Crusades, and then of course that was in the Kevin Costner movie also, but
I don't think he did. I think he was just a mere peasant.
No, he was. That's what I thought too. And he
So
didn't. I thought he didn't even rob people. He poached deer, which was
yeah, yeah,
obviously a killing. I mean, the king would have had him killed, or the prince would have had him killed for that. Which
oh,
is that
exactly,
was the thing. He was
exactly.
he was
I mean,
defying he was defying the crown to feed his people.
mm,
Which is shit, man. I've heard. My when my dad was little, he had a friend whose dad owned a grocery store, and they would sit and they would watch people from the catwalk and to see if they were stealing. And like my dad told me, like every week, this old black man or whoever would come in and would steal whatever, and it was the only person that his friend's dad let him steal it because he knew he had to. He was doing that because he needed to. And like my dad told me that story, and I'll never forget it. But he's like, that's what Robin Hood was, right? Like he's breaking the law and he's doing this and he's doing blah 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 blah. Fuck you, that's bullshit. The
but he
man is
wasn't.
trying to make sure his family doesn't starve to death,
But he wasn't
right?
famous. He wasn't
No,
famous until
no,
until
which
the,
makes
until the story until the story invoked him as famous and gave
right,
him the name of Robin Hood. Then
right,
they poured it right on and said, "No, that's our Robin Hood," and then that's the
yeah,
story of Robin Hood. I mean,
and that's great. And
it
and
was.
even if it's not real,
Oh
it still
yeah,
means yeah, it's fucking
it
great.
invokes a hero and hope, but really, in history, in real history, he's just a peasant.
Well,
um,
I mean, he's a peasant that was not concerned about anything but doing what he needed to do for his people. Well, whoever that might have been,
I
you
mean,
know.
I liked here my hometown. This is G-Force. My hometown is full of historic signs from the French and Indian War, as well as the Underground Railroad. So that's pretty cool. I mean,
Oh, that's cool. Well,
I
we're gonna
love.
go visit. We got to go visit Carolina soon because
I mean,
we got to go see.
uh, we haven't really
Hey, Dean.
and touched on that. We haven't really touched on that. It was 12 Years a Slave, the Underground Railroad, the movies of of African Americans. It's
Well, and maybe that's because that's
yeah,
Civil War. That's pre-American West, perhaps. Maybe that's a different, right? Because I mean, I don't know, but we can say maybe the American West starts at the end of the Civil War, right? Because that's when the expanded, you know. And the American West, the American West was expanded by all the Southerners who got all their shit taken away by the government. That's the other thing people don't realize. Like, why everybody in Arizona talks with a Southern accent? Because all their ancestors were Confederate veterans who got their shit taken away. That's a lot of shit people don't realize. After the war, the U.S. government went to every landowner in the South and said, "You owe us back taxes for these years you were at war," right? And then the government took their shit and auctioned it off to their friend. Like that's what carpetbaggers are. That's why the South has a real issue with shit like that because they were treated really wrong. And what's interesting is even now, manufacturing companies still leave New York, union-ridden New York, and they go to Alabama, right? And everybody's so happy to work for $12 an hour when they were paying somebody $35 an hour in New York to do it, right? And it's like it's carpetbagging. I don't know. I'm sure there's a term for it in other countries, but in this country, and I don't think it's purely a Southern thing, but it's carpet. That's what the new world order is, really, right? Like that's why we want that. That's why we want the lithium mined over there for a grain of rice, and then we'll buy. It's carpetbagging. That's what it is. The American Civil War and Abraham fucking Lincoln invented that shit, regardless of any of the evils or any of the reasons why maybe they thought they were justified to punish an entire group of people who may or may not have been even involved with the war politically, right? It's simply you're guilty because you live south of an imaginary line is how that worked, right? It was really a fucking shafting. It was not cool. It was not cool at all. And the American West was expanded by Southern veterans who lost everything. All Billy the Kid, Jesse James, Charles Goodnight, who took all the cattle from Texas. That was all 1886 and all these fucking cowboys and oh, we're going to Montana. Those were all fucking Texas boys, man. Those were all Texas boys who came back after the war and had nothing, and they round up stray cattle that were wild because nobody was taking care of them for 4 years of a war, and they said, "Man, we need to get the fuck out of here," and and like that's who did the West, you know. Uh, and there's only a few stories that expand on that because obviously being like a Confederate veteran or whatever, it has a stain on it. For we can get into that as a whole. I think that would be an interesting topic too because there's a lot of when they when you ask somebody why did we do this and they give you a one line answer, you know that that's bullshit, right? Like when you say, "Hey, why did we fight this war?" and they say, "Well, so we could fight them there instead of here." Like any one line answer is obvious bullshit, right? But that's what it says in the textbooks, and everybody goes, "Oh, yep, okay, sounds good to me."
Yeah,
Okay.
I need to do some real big research on that because you probably know it better than I would.
I've been questioning shit my whole life, Peter. And I always think, I mean, somebody will tell you something and literally the next sentence will contradict it. And I feel like sometimes I'm the only person in the room listening because I say, "Wait a minute, stop. What did you just say? Wait, can you read back what you just said?" And then I go, "Well, now I don't feel like I should listen to you because you obviously don't even know what your own fucking point is, you know? There's
Politics.
so much.
Politics can be very difficult, even in this country. It can be difficult with land, especially in that
Oh, yeah.
century. So Europeans came over here for land, but mostly gold. I mean, when that all dried up, gold dried up, they all left, and then we got stuck with the Dutch, mainly the Dutch.
Yeah,
So
which it's
so
funny how the Dutch were not very fucking nice motherfuckers. The Dutch East India Corp and stuff, like nobody, only people want to talk about England and America, but like, man, fucking Dutch motherfuckers, they're pretty ruthless, bro. The Dutch East and what was that Canadian Hudson Bay Company? The Hudson Bay Company is the one who invented scalping. Did you know that? Indians Indians never scalped people. The Hudson Bay Company paid for native scalps. They had bounties on them, and
okay.
it's like right, and that's actually where it came from. The Hudson Bay Company had bounties, and to prove you killed them, you brought in a scalp. And then the natives started saying, just like our boys in Vietnam, right? When they started seeing their buddy cut up, they said, "Well, we're gonna fucking do that too." And like that's why now Indians have always, especially Western, like they don't get me wrong, they will skin you alive and they will set you on fire. But the actual what we're used to of lifting the scalp, that is actually like that is a European French Hudson Bay Company invention. That is not a native invention. It's not. Now, like I said, a native will skin you alive and make a blanket out of you. But the scalping is not a native thing. That is a French Indian War Hudson Bay Company fucking thing. And that whole war was fought for the Hudson Bay Company. It's just like when we go to war for oil pipelines, right? That whole war was for beaver fur, right? Because beaver was the thing. People don't realize that. That was one of the big things in America in the 1840s. We had not found any gold in the West yet, right? We were only here to farm hemp. That's what George Washington and everybody was here to do, was to farm hemp, right? And to make shit. Um, and then the mountain men, the first group of the American society who got tired of society, right? Because this is not a new thing. It's not just you and me going, "God, the world is such a fucked up place." No, Americans did it in droves in the 1830s and 40s, right? Because they had just got done with a lot of political bullshit, right? They just got done with the Spanish American War, and fucking there was a lot. People were being drafted, and people were feeling not free. And so a lot of young men said, fuck this, man. I got a rifle and a horse. I'm going west. And they started the Mountain Man movement, which was a huge anti-social movement, right? Like we think about people now going to, Portland, Oregon and living in that little Chad place or whatever. And like that maybe is all bullshit because back in the day, they became mountain men. They got a rifle and they went to the wilderness and they said, fuck you people. I don't want nothing to do with you. Now that's a motherfucker, right? But then that's what drove the beaver pelt industry, which was a multi-billion-dollar industry for this country. If it wasn't for the beaver, we would have everybody would have left just like they did your country, right? Everybody would have left. Then the beavers dried up, and then in England, and I don't know if it started in England, but at some point, the fashion of beaver hats, you had to have a beaver top hat, right? Well, that went out of style, and silk became the fashion, right? Now the price of beaver plummeted, and now there's no work. Now this country, we were dead in the water again. We had no commerce. We were fucking exporting a little bit of cotton. We were still exporting mostly hemp because hemp is what's going to save the world. All these motherfuckers doing all this dumb shit. Don't fucking smoke it and get high. Fucking grow hemp, Electric cars and all that shit ain't going to solve nothing. It's going to be hemp. And fucking George Washington knew that. They all knew that. But then that's when the Buffalo, the Industrial Revolution came, and that still was not going to help my country because all the good steel and all the good machinery and all that good industrial shit was fucking coming from Sweden and Germany. But you know what we had in our country that no one else had? We had buffalo. And buffalo provided every leather belt that ever drove any fucking lathe or mill in the fucking world for like 100 years. And like that, people don't know why we killed all the buffalo. They say, oh, they killed all the buffalo for their hide. Well, they needed Abraham Lincoln's, who's dead now, obviously, but his industrial complex machine needed leather drive belts for machinery. When you look at a water wheel that turns, right, people don't realize that turns a giant shaft on the ceiling of a building. And on that shaft are these giant buffalo leather belts that you then put on your lathe to turn steel, right? Because they didn't have electricity. And then that's why we killed all the fucking buffalo. So it was interesting that our commerce actually lived on, much like the Red Dead game, right? Our country survived for like 35 years on hunting. And like as a world, we were the world exporter of fucking goods made and processed from animals, taken by badass motherfuckers out there on the range hunting shit. And like that might be the only time that's ever happened. Like the whole country was fucking in stasis for 30 years, being a contender in the World Economic Forum with beaver fur and buffalo hides. Holy shit. That's an entire part of the American West that's real, that no one talks about, right? You can watch all the Kevin Costner movies and they go buffalo hunting, but nobody understands why we were shooting thousands of buffalo. Nobody understands why we were doing it.
Well, Dino still doesn't because you got beaver jokes up the wazoo.
Beaver. Beaver's really good. Y'all want to go beaver hunting? Peter, I feel like I'm talking too much, Peter. I'm very sorry.
No, it's we're nearly tracking. It's your show because you're nearly tracking 2 hours, so that's pretty good.
Wow.
It's pretty good.
I see we have 9 people. I'm very appreciative. I have not figured out how to schedule. I mean, I actually think I might have figured it out, but it was too late. But so the next time we do this here, I will do like you, and I'll have a cool thing that says like the countdown and like I didn't know how to do that.
Once you know how to do it, you'll breeze through it.
That's what I figured.
Took me a while, but it's easy. So yeah.
Well, even when I was sending you the link, I finally saw this button that said schedule it for later. And I was like, damn, son, I bet if I hit that and put 5 p.m., I was like, that's obviously the button. I was like, you're dumb, Black. You're a fucking dumbass.
But I mean, that's why I sent you the promo picture. so you can stick it up on that little.
Yeah, yeah. I think. Did you see the post I made? I mean, I figured out how to make a post. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody saw it. But
Doesn't matter. You'll get around to it. I mean, you know.
I'll figure it out. Hey,
Um,
we've had 9 people, and to all the 9 people in here, man, you must know that we appreciate you. I would
oh
never
yeah.
thought that 9 people would
Oh,
care
hell
about
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and talking about westerns too, man. I love westerns. I can talk about westerns to anybody for an infinite amount of time, and I feel like there's so much shit we never even touched on.
Oh yeah. I mean,
You
you
know.
could probably do it. You could probably do another part two. Really, to be quite honest
Oh
with you.
yeah.
So,
There's so much. There's
hmm,
so much.
I
And
mean,
I would love to know more about to me, the Western idea of I don't know how you would say it, but the Ned Kellys, and that's not American Western, but it is,
I call it.
it's similar.
I call it pioneer westerns
Okay,
only
I like that.
because pioneer westerns. I think everybody knows what pioneer means. I mean,
Right.
People from different countries coming to pioneer over here or Australia. So
Right.
um, either to its detriment or to their detriment, or either to actually make or stake a claim in this country. So uh, we had Maori wars, of course, over here.
Hmm.
Started off with their own tribes fighting each other in trenches up and down the North and South Island. Then we had the colonial wars with the Europeans fighting Maori. It was called the Maori Wars, really. So with English constables and Scotsmen trying to rape the land of New Zealand. Uh, so yeah, we had gold rushes, of course,
Yeah.
Dutch and stuff people coming in, Chinese people all over the world, of course. So making railroads, cookies and beavers. Now that's good.
Cookies and beavers. I don't know where we got the cookies, but I'm for them too. Are you familiar with the channel Lindy Beige?
What? The what?
Do you
The what?
know
What?
the YouTube? Do you know the
No.
YouTube channel Lindy Beige?
Lindy Page? No. No.
I will send you him. I think you will find him very interesting, and
All right.
he has a couple amazing videos on Moro
Well,
wars and
mm,
battles and stuff. Most of the things that I know about Moro tribes culture is from Lindy Page. He's a extremely knowledgeable historical person, and he does have a couple great videos. All his videos are great. His historical ones I love. Um, but yeah, he has a great story about a certain battle. I wish I could remember it, but he talks about how the Moros were, arguably the greatest sappers, and they were the most expert and entrenched warfare
mm.
than the Europeans, and it was not something the
They knew the land.
Europeans were used to. Hmm?
They knew the land.
They knew
And
the land, and he said that they had certain ways that they built their forts.
yeah.
And he said, anyway, by the time I got done, I looked more into it because it was very interesting, and I didn't know that. But he said that it's like one of the greatest earthwork moving militaries in the world were the Moros.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I
Maoris.
think I will send you his page, because everybody should be watching Lindy Page, because he's very knowledgeable and very interesting.
Oh, Rolando's just put it on. So
Oh, there you go. Yeah, Lindy. Now man, I would definitely like to hang out with Lindy Page. I don't know he's a very eccentric, weird fellow, but man, aren't we all though?
1.23 million. God, he's got a lot of he's got a lot of subscribers. Woo-hoo.
Huh?
He's got a lot of subscribers, that man.
Oh yeah, I remember him when he had like maybe 3,000, and now I don't even know what he's at now, right? Like he's at like 90 or some crazy shit. Like he's there, man. But he what a knowledgeable dude. Very interesting to learn from him about all aspects of. Definitely a military historian, and he has a great. I'll have to send you a couple of these videos. He has one about Napoleon's number one arch enemy, who was named by Napoleon himself, and it's this guy that none of us has ever heard of, and he tells us the whole story of it. It's just amazing. It's amazing. He's an
Wonder if he
amazing
knows
character.
about the German. Wonder if he knows about the German mercenaries that Napoleon actually hired.
Like the Headless Horseman, like those guys.
No,
What were those guys called?
Napoleon actually hired some German mercenaries to do something for his war effort. So
Yeah,
I think it was assassinate somebody. So
see that part of it. I know that he employed German mercenaries, and I also believe what are those other God, holy shit! There's those Swiss guys that had the collars. They had that weird collar and the long fucking axe. They're famous mercenaries. What were those guys called? They had they wore those weird, funny, Renaissance-looking hats. I think they were Swedes.
Not meat eaters.
No, not no, not those guys.
Beef eaters.
I'll have to. Beef eaters, yeah, not those guys. I'll have to show you. Hello, Skybottom. How are you, brother? We've been sitting around bullshitting about westerns. Everybody go subscribe to Skybottom. He's got the coolest station. Join his intergalactic trout route.
Like, should we leave it there?
Sure. I think we Peter, it is always a pleasure to talk to you, young man.
Yep.
Always.
Same to you. Let's leave it there, I think, and we'll have another.
Yeah, it sounds good to me, brother.
Part 2, because it's well, what was it? So what the hell was that?
That was backfire. No, absolutely. We will continue this in a fortnight on the PGM show. How about that?
Yep, exactly right.
Yeah.
What did I say exactly right? I don't know. My dialogue is just horrible. Thank you, you lovely people in the chat. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we appreciate everyone. Well, this show has this is just two friends getting together talking about, it could be anything. We're not limiting ourselves to toys or collecting or anything. Today we touched on westerns, which there's a lot more to come. The swing shift. We're going to bring the intellectual back. I don't know. Well, that's probably not true.
Probably not true. Oh, no.
Probably not true. Maybe we should wear shirts with collars on them and ties or something. Fuck. Take us seriously. No. I'm like standing outside. Look, I'm like one of those people. Like I might as well be on the couch like this. Like, hey, how you doing? Have you ever been in one of those streams?
Yes.
Yeah, where the guys. I don't want to be that guy.
I have a stream. That's I was just kidding.
No. Mark is a pro. Pro what? I don't know, but a pro nonetheless. Bloody not true. Fun stream. Let's talk beavers again. Yeah, let's talk beavers. You ever gone beaver hunting?
No, we don't have beavers in our country.
You don't have beavers there, I guess, huh?
No,
you got muskrats or neutral rats? Anything?
We got neutral rats. Yeah, we got rats.
You got neutral rats? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's like a beaver.
We don't. Yeah. Rat with wings. We've got pigeons.
Yeah, pigeons. Squab. Do you not eat them?
No.
It could be $18 on a menu where Mark is. Fucking no shit. It's like a $20 meal and fucking.
Well, he probably eat pheasant too if it puts in front of him. So.
Oh fuck! I love pheasant. I used to work in Iowa. That's the only place I ever was where there was a lot of pheasant. I shot one of those motherfuckers every day and ate it. I would go out every day and shoot a pheasant and eat that motherfucker.
We don't really have pheasants in this country. I think we do, but
they probably were brought there, huh?
Yeah, introduced. So
Do y'all have a lot of invasive species problems like Australia? Because you're an island.
yeah, some, but not to the extent that Australia has.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they're fucked, huh? I mean,
yeah,
they got some fucking problems, bro.
yeah,
We're gonna have a problem here, and the problem we have around this part of the country is, like people don't understand that a feral cat is not, and that's Australia's problem, right?
yep.
It's like
Uh,
what feral cats kill 6 billion songbirds a year in this country.
yeah,
You
we've
know,
got those
who
two.
knows?
We've got those two as well. So
Yeah,
they
that's a
killed.
big.
They killed heaps of indigenous birds here, which was
Yeah,
really horrible because they could go extinct
yeah.
rapidly. So
Yeah, there's not. That's the thing about islands, right? The animals y'all have ain't fucking nowhere else,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's why the dodo bird. Everybody says, "Oh, the dodo bird," was because it was stupid. No, it lived on an island that it had no problems, and then fucking, the Dutch East India Corporation actually showed up and fucking cut all the trees down and let the rats off their ship onto the
yeah,
land, and then they fucking killed all the dodo birds. Like, you know down here in the American South, the fire ant, most people don't know this, but the fire ant is not indigenous to this country. It came over, somewhere, somewhere in the, I think maybe pre-World War II, but in the 30s and 40s, the fire ant came to this country on a boat. And that's why there's no turkeys and there's no doves, because those animals nest on the ground, right? And fire ants have taken over the South of America. And that's why the old people say, "Well, we used to have doves and we used to have quail and we used to have turkeys," and then but you don't now. And because the fire ant that we all think is just a normal thing, it's not. And the only reason we think it's normal is because it's been here for 80 years and we don't know, we don't get it.
I, that might, if that's a fire ant, it might be from the African continent that was introduced.
Is that where it came from? I'm not positive.
I'm only guessing.
But
So,
I just learned that not long ago. They said no,
um,
those aren't indigenous to this country. That's why there's no turkeys and no quail. Because they nest
yeah,
on the ground. I went, no
it's a
shit.
shame that, it's a shame that really, isn't it? So
Yeah. Well, and the shame part of it is that you have, it's just like we were talking about Old Yeller. You got people that are like, well, you can't go get rid of that cat. And it's like, no, that cat is basically a wild animal that's eating everything. Like if you're a farmer, I have a friend. I'll let you go after this. I have a friend who's like a big vegan, which is fine. But he wants to tell me about how, hundreds of billions of acres are being destroyed worldwide so we can farm cattle, And I was like, do you know what a farmer does? Do you know what a farmer does? Have you ever heard of a farm hunting license? Like, farmers, whether you're vegan or not, those motherfuckers kill more goddamn animals than anybody else on the planet. I'm a hunter. I fucking raised and killed shit to eat. And those fucking farmers, they kill shit and let it lay and rot. So like all these farmer vegan people fucking protect you. Like, come on, y'all. If you're gonna kill it, you might as well eat it. Don't kill it and fucking because you're guarding your fucking dehydrated fucking protein fucking bullshit. Right? Like like my bacon is processed, but they're eating dehydrated fucking like instant mashed potatoes. Like, well that looks really processed to me. That looks way more processed than my bacon. Like my bacon the pig was killed, we cut this fat off, and then we put salt on it. That's the processing of bacon, right? Everybody's like, oh, it's highly processed. Like, no, it's got some salt on it, and it's got some smoke on it. What the? And then they wanna feed me THTP or some crazy. Like, no. Yeah, Darth Wizzy Wiz. Hey, good to see you, man. How are
yeah.
you doing, bro?
All right.
Anyway,
See you in the
let's
green.
go.
See you in the
Yeah.
green room.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
If I hit end, it'll just be the show
room.
will end.
Yeah.
Right.
Show will end. We'll be in the green room.
And then we'll be there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll chat.
Hey. Everybody in the chat, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you guys.
Second swing shift show complete. Thank you very much.
In the bag. Excellent, Peter. It's been a real pleasure, sir.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Everyone in the chat, thank you guys. We will see you sooner rather than later, hopefully. Y'all have a good one. Y'all make sure to hit the like button for me, okay?
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah. And
We'll see y'all soon.
Subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. You probably have, and subscribe to my channel, PGM Joe.
Yeah, don't worry about me. Subscribe to Peter. Make sure y'all go watch Pete. I miss Pete a lot because I wake up in the morning. I wake up the morning at 5, and it's like, hey, Peter just dropped a thing 3 hours ago, and I was like, dang. I'm like, shit, motherfucker, I was asleep. But I catch up. I catch up. So, hey, much love and respect to everyone. Peter, it's been a pleasure. We'll do this again real soon.
We will.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
In a fortnight, 2 weeks at the PGM show. In 2 weeks, episode 3, The Swing Shift, over on his channel.
Swing.
We're swinging. Swing. Oh, hey, we just got a sound effect. That's great. Swing. Swing. Okay. All right. We'll see everybody later. Good night.
Good night.